All right, it is Tuesday, July 27th at 5:30. We have a full dais. I'm calling this meeting to order. We will be going into executive session to discuss two items. Item 2A, City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071 and 551.072 to seek the advice of legal counsel and to deliberate upon the acquisition of real property interest associated with the construction of wastewater treatment plant number 3 at 385 State Highway 304, Unit B, Bastrop, Texas 78602, and its collection systems, including all related agreements, authorizations, easements, resolutions, and associated legal actions. Item 2B, City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 to seek the advice of legal counsel regarding Bastrop County District Court Cause Number 1842-21, MC Bastrop 71 LP, and related litigation matters. It is 5:30 and we are in executive session. Okay, it is 6:27 and we are out of executive session and we are on item number 3. Take any necessary or appropriate action on matters posted for consideration in closed executive session. We have no action as a result of executive session. It is 6:27 and we're going to take a 3-minute break. We will be back at 6:30. It's 6:27, we are in recess. Wow. Okay, Colin, we good? All right, it is 6:30 on Tuesday, July 27th. We have a quorum. We have a full dais, but we're gathering them up. It is 6:31. We are called back to order. If you would please rise, we will say the pledges to both flags. If you would please remain standing, we have Pastor Dustin Bartee from, I would say, my church. I kind of go to two churches, but Pastor Bartee is at Bastrop Christian Church, and he's going to have our invocation tonight. If you'd wait just a second, Councilmember Crouch will join us on the dais. I don't want to leave him in the back of the room. He's having charger issues, and we don't want his iPad going dead in the middle of council. All right, thank you, Pastor Bartee.
Let's pray. And dear God, we are thankful for this beautiful day you've given us. We are thankful for this time and when we can come and business can be heard, and reports and ideas and visions and matters of great importance to this city. We're thankful for our servants, our elected officials, and all of our city staff and the tremendous work they do, making Bastrop such a wonderful place to live. We thank you for this city. We pray for her future as she holds the balance with tradition and innovation, as she always remains hospitable and kind. We ask that you bless our time together. In Jesus' name, amen.
You may be seated. Thank you so much, Pastor Barty. Great to see you. All right, Council, we're going to get going with mayor's reports. And Colin, I have a couple things before we get started. I did a really fun thing on Saturday. Councilmember Jackson and I both helped celebrate Ora B. Perkins Moore turned 90 years old. No glasses, no hearing aid, sharp as a tack, huge family, lovely, lovely person. I'll have a picture of the party at my next mayor's report, but it was really a great afternoon. And then several of us know that Yolanda De Leon passed away, and I know that has really been felt throughout the community, and it's been lovely to see all the dedication, and if you would keep that family in your prayers, it would be very much appreciated. Have you noticed it's hotter? We have had rain like nobody's business this July, but it is hot, and it is expected to be hot. And I serve on the TML, the Texas Municipal League's advisory board to ERCOT, and an acronym none of us knew but after February, we all know what ERCOT is, don't we? So I wanted to tell you a couple things. The peak demand in the state of Texas was August 12th of 2019, and it was 74,820 megawatts. That was the most power the state of the ERCOT area, because that's not the entire state, the ERCOT area had consumed. On Sunday, February 14th of this very year, a date many of us remember quite well, the peak demand was 69,812. They are expecting, with the 100-degree days that we're having, for the demand to be 76,000 megawatts. So do not be surprised if you are signed up with the reverse alerts that it is possible, and it generally happens. The other two times that it's been really high was August of 2020, which I was only under the demand by 500 megawatts, so it was another 74,000 day. So it's between 4 and 6 o'clock in August. Usually later in August, the kids are coming home from school, people are coming home from work, TVs are going on, air conditioners are slamming, and it just puts a horrible strain on the system. So please be wise, please be conscious. Good luck with having your children and your grandchildren turn off lights. My grandchildren that's still a skill they're developing. But it's really a good idea. And when you see those requests for conservation come out, it is only helping you, because when the demand gets out of control, then they have to go buy on the open market. Then there's a trickle down that happens. So be conscious of that. When it's really hot, make sure that you're doing the appropriate things and try to conserve power.
I have a
Councilmember
question.
Rogers?
With your conversation going back to February, with that high demand, would rollovers step in or no? Or
At
rollouts, or
76,
what it was
they'll, great question. At 76, as they're seeing the demand and the supply get close, they'll send out, please conserve, and if you don't conserve, then the rollouts start
I just
happening.
wanna
They'll
make
start
sure
shedding
everybody realized
loads.
that could
Yes,
happen
ma'am.
again.
Yes, ma'am, we don't want to go through that again, but they'll start shedding loads to be able to keep the grid. Got to keep that, exactly right. Can't have things go down. And then, all right, Colin, we can go to the next slide. Did a lot of fun things. In the upper left-hand corner, these are some new friends of mine from the Dallas area. They were here with the Kings and Queens for the Corvette invasion. They had a blast, and really some sweet people. We've been still texting back and forth. You'll see right below there, we had 350 Corvettes. And I hope that you guys got a chance to walk around and see them all. I was to pick a mayor's choice, which I thought was really, really fun. And then my husband pointed out, yeah, you're going to make one person happy and make 349 people mad. And then I was like, well, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. So I got some advice, and that's a picture of the car that I picked for my mayor's choice, which was a 1961, owned by a guy named Tommy Noel out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and it was just a gorgeous, gorgeous car. If you go to the bottom left-hand corner, I had some little visitors from Little Sheep Learning Center. They asked me hard questions about being a mayor. They were thrilled to sit in the mayor's seat and sit on the council dais, and we had a great time. They are getting some civics lessons as a part of their summer camp, so that was a lot of fun. Colin, if you'll go just to the right of that, Ortho 360 had their ribbon cutting. They have a gorgeous new building that's very close to Tahitian on the frontage road. And man, have braces changed since the 70s. Who would have thought? I got a really neat tour of their office, and they provide a lot of service to our citizens, and we're appreciative of that. Colin, if you go up slightly, in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm so proud of our council. Once again, we won the attendance record for the TML Region 10 meeting, thanks to our city secretary for participating in that as well. It's a quarterly time when we get together and talk about issues that are relevant to our region, and that meeting, Senator Eckhart was there and talking about redistricting, which is an interesting topic for all of us. Right above that, you'll see the TML Small Cities Conference. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and I attended that. And then the best for last, the Boards and Commissions Open House. Several of you made it out. It was great to see folks. We are still accepting applications. If you would like to provide some of your skill set to help the city have a better community, would be happy to get your application. And all of the boards had a table set up, and I'm not trying to pick favorites or pick on anybody, but the Parks Board pretty well kicked everybody. Sweet Carrie Fossler sits on that board, and she had cookies with a skateboard on it. It was awesome. And when you have free food, that you tend to collect the most amount of people. But and Curtis Hancock is the staff liaison for that board, and he put a board together because he wanted to have a poster, and Carrie put one together. They didn't know that each other was doing that, and they picked some of the same pictures. So they were very enthusiastic, and Curtis was bragging that not only did they have people sign up for their boards, but they had people signing up to be volunteers if they weren't able to serve on the board. So I just love our community so very, very much. All right, Colin, if you'll go to the next page. I turned my report in on July 21st, and these are the things that I have done since then, and I did every single one of those things, and was really honored to be included in welcoming Nicole de Guzman as the new executive director, and we'll get an opportunity to hear from her later this evening. So the Teen Academy was fun today. Several of those items, you'll see pictures of those at the next council meeting. On my last page, upcoming events, I want to bring everyone's attention. The skate park, the ribbon cutting will be at 3 o'clock at Fisherman's Park on Friday. That is going to be a really great asset for our community. I would encourage folks to come out. Next week is Farm Street Opry. Terry Moore is going to be one of the guests. A lot of us know Terry, and if you want to hear her sing, come on out. The homecoming parade is August 7th. I have a feeling we'll hear more about that later. And our next council meeting is August 10th. And before I go to council members, the other thing I want to share with the community is that our city manager wears a lot of hats and says grace over a lot of things. And last night, he now has the opportunity to say grace over his first grandchild. So, now he's a grandpa. So, Katie and Daniel had a little girl, Elizabeth Joy. And I think she's already fulfilling her name as being a joy because she was early. And those of us who were a million months pregnant always appreciate early ones. And I know that she's going to be very happy for the Hoffman family. And with that, Councilmember Peterson, do you have anything for us this evening?
Yes, Mayor. Very quickly, like you said, people will be talking about our homecoming. I just want to let all those car enthusiasts out there know that we're going to have a show and shine on top of the hill and at the arena, And it's not just a show and shine for us. Anyone want to bring your car, come on up and join us, have a good time. The more cars, the merrier. So bring all your old junk up there and let everybody take a look at it. Thanks.
What time is that, Mr. Peterson?
We're going to start early. It's probably going to be right after the parade.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. Councilmember Rogers?
I don't have anything this week, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Thank you, Mayor. Since our last city council meeting, I attended the regional programs of the Capital Executive Committee. As part of that, I also sit on the Capital Area Emergency Communication District's Board of Managers, and we're continuing to take steps to move to the next generation 911 servers, or service that will allow for a 98% mapping accuracy. We're pretty pleased with that. We also attended the Capital Area Initiatives Foundation, where I'm happy to announce that regionally we were able to secure a $225,000 grant from St. David's Foundation for an aging network coordinator to increase educating, visibility, and accountability in our region. So we're pretty excited about that. I did go to the Corvette Invasion. I was honored to represent the city manager in picking out a Corvette. So if anybody was upset with the Corvette that I picked out, which was a 71, they need to talk to the city manager because it was his pick. That's what the trophy says. Just want to be clear on that. And then we also had a special executive committee meeting. There was a program from the Office of the Governor's Homeland Security Office that funded 14 programs for victims assistance programs. We asked them to take that back, and I'm happy to say that we're now funding 27 programs across the state for victims assistance. So hopefully I can present some to the city manager so that we're aware of what's going on within Bastrop County. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. Councilmember Crouch?
Since the last meeting, I continued to get some information on maybe providing playing fields for soccer and baseball and just all sports, really, and also a par 3 golf. So just looking for places to put those things in town since we're running out of room. And another thing was, and I got reminded of that when I ran outside to get my cord, was to the train horn. I've been looking at the city limits for a non-train blowing area and to see what all is involved with having that happen, where you can just feel the train and maybe not hear it all the way through town. Council member or Doc, and I looked at the Kerr Center about a month ago, and I had some people come and look at that for structural pieces, and have an appointment with them, and I'll share that information with City Manager Hoffman and Doc, so we can all go and look at that. They were concerned with the floor, and just want to look at that and got that set up. Bastrop Biking Association. We've had a couple of group rides, and it's just a unorganized group of bikers that are in town, and I reached out to them to see for ideas on creating a biking awareness program in Bastrop to where we can ride in town and not get hit by a car. And so we've had a couple of group rides for 2 weekends in a row just to gather ideas on simple ways that we can make Bastrop a biking-friendly city, and there's some more people, especially since COVID happened, that are on the streets walking and biking, and it would be nice to get some designated areas in town or these new developments coming in. And also, kudos to everybody on getting the skate park done. I harassed all the skateboarders for the past 3 years since I learned about the skate park on what they wanted for the skate park, and could see their excitement on it, and now I'm harassing them as they're leaving the skate park, even though they're kind of road riding down there since it's not officially open. But they are so happy to have a place to skate. So thanks to past council for getting all of that put together and have a skate park for our kids. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Crouch. Councilmember Jackson?
Right, that's, I just want to kind of tag on to that. That skate park has been a long time in coming, and so the community is so excited about that. A lot of the youth, I think as I mentioned, maybe one of our previous council members, a lot of the kids that first started that effort are now parents and have kids, so it has been a while before we got that taken care of. So that is a great accomplishment for our community. The mayor mentioned about Yoli's Tacos and more about Yolanda De Leon, or Miss Yoli as I call her. A lot of you know that was one of my favorite places to go. Whenever we were talking about the food trucks, I would always mention them when we were doing some new regulations. And there's been a tremendous turnout for her passing. There was a tremendous balloon release on Saturday night, and I almost had to park at a neighboring building that I happen to know the person that owns that place, and just to have a place to park because there were so many people. But her services are going to be this Friday. There's visitation at Providence Funeral Home from 4 to 8:30 with a prayer service afterwards, and the memorial service will be Saturday at 10 o'clock also at Providence, and interment will follow at Fairview. She was really good for the community, and you'll see more in the paper this week. I wrote a little article and took some pictures of the balloon release and things, and you'll see that on Thursday. It's in today's Elgin paper. The other thing, the birthday party with Miss Moore was it was very special. I went to school with some of her kids, and it was just so nice. And like the mayor said, 90 years old, didn't miss a beat. She's just absolutely wonderful. And the food afterwards and the music was absolutely wonderful as well. But last thing is homecoming is coming up this next week, and I am so excited about that because as a graduate of 50 years ago, we're having our 50th class reunion, so we'll be in the parade with the class of 71, and I can't believe it's been 50 years, but it has been, or will be, and so hopefully we'll see you all there. It's going to be a great weekend for homecoming with the parade and all the other events that are going on there as well. So that's, I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as you mentioned, on Friday there will be a ribbon cutting at 3 o'clock on July the 30th for the Wheeled Sports Plaza Skate Park at Fisherman's Park. Love to see people there. Council, you've got some work to do to round out your appointments to boards and commissions, and we've established some dates that should be on your calendars. On Friday, August 13th, for everyone to know, is the deadline to take in applications through the city secretary's office. You can do that online for any of our board positions. Council, you guys are scheduled to hold interviews on Monday the 23rd and Wednesday the 25th, and then mayor and council will formalize the mayor's appointments on September the 14th, and then we have our annual orientation on September the 16th at 5:30. And in 2 weeks, we will have another council meeting, and here is a list of things that are on the agenda for August the 10th. And council, I don't think any of those things are new. I'll point out the last 2 bullet points. Those items were going to be on tonight's agenda. The PID financing agreement for Viridian Development needed a little bit more work on our end. Our financial consultants needed a little bit more time with the PID financing agreement, so that's scheduled for August 10th and not tonight. And at the developer's request, you will see a presentation about a proposed municipal utility district in northern Bastrop County, also on August the 10th. And I'll cover this in a bit more detail in the very next item, assuming we take that up next. August 17th is budget workshop number 1, and if we need a second workshop, that is scheduled for August 18th. And then on August 24th is a regular council meeting. We'll ask council to take action on financial management policy, purchasing policy, and investment policy. Council does that annually. We have scheduled our joint meeting with Visit Bastrop August the 30th, and we're targeting 5 o'clock. Susan, I don't think you know that, but we are looking at 5 o'clock for that evening. And I'll also mention, council, and I'll cover this a little later, we need a city council meeting on September 21st. That's a state law-driven requirement for how soon you need to act on the budget and tax rate after you post notice. And so since we need to meet on September 21st anyways, that's the third Tuesday of the month, so that's not a normal council meeting. We're thinking that we'll just make September 21st a regular council meeting, and if this works for you guys and it works from an agenda development standpoint, we don't need a council meeting on September 28th. So the idea is, rather than meet on September 14th and 28th, those 2 September meetings would be September 14th and 21st. And I think I mentioned that in the weekly memo, and we'll follow up with calendar items.
Everybody okay with that? Excellent. Okay, because you know I like to take things out of order, I'm going to call up citizen comments because I have one person signed up for citizen comments, and we're already talking about homecoming parade, and I think that's what she wants to talk about, and I'm pretty sure she doesn't want to, although she loves all of you, may not want to sit through the budget and all of the presentations. So Colin, we are going to the top of page 3, item number 10, citizen comments. Lori Chapin.
Thank you so much. My name is Lori Chapin. I'm here as a representative of the Bastrop Homecoming Committee, and with me tonight is Tanya Matheson Porter, our president. Tanya is very aware of how much I love to talk about homecoming, so I'm going to follow a script just to keep myself in check. First of all, we'd like to thank y'all for all of your support, past and present. We are celebrating our 74th anniversary this year, making us the longest running festival in Bastrop. Next year, speaking of anniversaries, will be our 75th. We're planning a Diamond Jubilee for that event in 2022, and we're very excited about it. The name for our event results from its very beginnings in 1947. During World War II, business boomed in Bastrop as 90,000 plus military personnel were based at Camp Swift, a few miles north of Bastrop. When the war ended and camp closed, business lessened drastically. As an attempt to give the city a boost, civic and business leaders created the first Homecoming Jubilee. It was intended to invite those military personnel back to Bastrop to visit, welcome home, homecoming. The event's held every year during the first full weekend in August. It includes rodeo, CPRA rodeo, and live musical entertainment. Activities located at Mayfest Hill, or Up on the Hill, as us old Bastropians know it, will include food and merchandise vendors, cornhole tournament, Mike Matheson Memorial Horseshoe Tournament, a Texas Hold'em tournament that the American Legion will host, and the Blue Flame Club Car Show this year, which is new for us this year. We're very excited. Our grand parade is held Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. This year's Grand Marshal is Jared McClinton. He is U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired in 2017 with 30 years of service. He is Buffalo Soldier President Alamo to the San Antonio Motorcycle Club. I hope y'all will be there to meet him. He's a wonderful person to talk with. BHS classes of 1971 and 1970 will be our honorary parade marshals this year. Immediately following the parade and all BHS, CCHS class and sports reunion will be held at the Performing Arts Center, the PAC. Past and present athletes who have made an impact in their school and in our community will be recognized, while alumni will have the opportunity to visit with ex-classmates. Although we were unable to award scholarships in 2020, we very much hope to be able to provide them for the 21-22 school year. I don't know if everybody's aware, it's our reason for hosting this event to award scholarships. We've awarded over 90,000 to date. This year's scholarship awards include the Mike Matheson Memorial, and the Jane Lloyd Sanders Memorial Scholarship. Sorry. I should have left that out. I think I'm stating the obvious when I say 2020 was difficult for everyone, including nonprofits like ours. The continued uncertainty of 2021 caused us to start a little later than normal on planning and wiped out quite a few of our fundraising events, creating a lower than normal budget for us to work with for things like advertising this year. Sponsorship money, also understandably much lower than in past years. Also, most likely due to the pandemic, we were unable to book a carnival for this year. We hope to bring that back in 2022. And lastly, we will unfortunately also not enjoy quite the variety of food vendors that we have in the past. Concerns over the application process and fees associated with the new food truck ordinance in a still very, very uncertain year have caused most to cancel, even though we offered to waive our fee to them. Our committee would love to be given the opportunity to work with the council to come up with a solution that works well for all nonprofit groups hosting festivals in Bastrop in the future. Thank you. Any questions?
Great job. Thank you so much. We will see you Saturday.
You better. Better be in the parade. Thanks again.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have anybody else signed up for citizen comments?
No, Mayor.
All right, Council, we're going to be going back to page 2. We're in the middle of the page column. We're going back to 8A. On item 8A, receive presentation on the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget and announce that the public hearing on the fiscal 22 budget will be held on September 14th, 2021 at 6:30 at City Hall, 1311 Chestnut. Council, we've got the document. The first document was at the dais. Mr. Hoffman, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor, and special thanks to Chief Financial Officer Tracy Waldron, who just made her way up to sit close to the microphone in case we need her. A lot of work, obviously, went into putting this budget document together. The budget document has a bit of a different look and feel to it. I hope that you find that readable. I will say that the way the software is set up, it is more suited for online distribution, and that's part of the direction we're heading in. We do think we worked hard to come up with a readable printed document. Look forward to submitting it for the Government Finance Officers Award, which the City of Bastrop consistently gets. And again, that's a pretty prestigious award that not so many municipalities achieve. Tracy does a terrific job of putting a lot of information together with the help of departments, and really appreciate it. The mayor just mentioned that you just now received the budget book. You did just now receive the budget book. I wanted to speak to that just briefly. Numbers were changing through the weekend, and even today. We have just recently received the certified roll from the Central Appraisal District, and so obviously that's really important information for us to have, and we're now giving you a budget document that we're not asking you to consider or vote on tonight, that we're confident in the numbers, specifically the tax rate numbers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. But before we talk a lot of numbers, I want to talk and highlight the major initiatives that are reflected in this year's budget proposal. Council, you won't be surprised by much of what you hear this evening. We did a pretty extensive job back on May 14th when we met in our pre-budget planning session, where we talked about these initiatives and got your early indication as to what you hope to fund in this next funding cycle. And these initiatives are strategically organized around your 9 focus areas and listed in the order in which your focus areas are listed. The first of which is communication. And Council, you're again familiar with the internet hotspots that are now available to be checked out from the library. That was predominantly grant funded, and appreciate the library director Bonnie's work to seek out that grant. There are some general fund costs associated with ongoing fees that are associated with running those hotspots, but those are now available. Another more significant enhancement that's in this budget is additional ability to communicate our recreation programming, and there's actually quite a bit of emphasis in this budget proposal about the city being engaged in recreation programs on a more full-time basis. As council knows, we've been transitioning for several months now from when the YMCA used to provide fitness and other recreation programs to the community. That is going remarkably well. We've got more participants now in our programs than the YMCA did at the time that they departed. Also in this budget is funding for a full-time recreation manager and some professional services associated with communicating the city's message, both about recreation programming and other things. Another council focus area or priority is community safety. A couple of very significant additions that are reflected in this budget are staffing for both the police department and the fire department. We did talk about this a bit again on May 14th. The Criminal Investigations Division in the police department has been struggling to keep up for quite some time now. I get monthly reports from the police department that indicate how many new cases are filed compared to how many cases are resolved, and the number of new filings always exceeds the number that is dealt with. And currently we have a pretty significant 4,000-hour deficit in hours, our projection of what it will take for us to get caught up. So this budget recommends the addition of a supervising lieutenant and an investigator, a detective for that division be added to the budget. The budget also calls for the addition of 1 firefighter. The city has made quite the significant investment in building a fire department that isn't as dependent on volunteers as we were just a year ago. We absolutely still love our volunteers and appreciate them and still depend on them, but now we do have 6 full-time paid firefighters, and that has made a tremendous difference in our responsiveness, and we can measure that. One ongoing issue is the extent to which our chief and assistant chief still spend time during the day personally responding to calls, adding 1 firefighter that works during the day that is able to provide that 3rd person on a truck, which is consistent with National Fire Protection Association standards, and making sure that Eric and Andreas can spend more time doing what it is they need to be doing during the day would be very helpful. We also have a different kind of job lined up for Assistant Chief Eric DeArmit than compared to what he's been used to. And this is kind of a theme with how we're handling a development-related workload. And the idea is we contract out more of the plan review from a fire code perspective and allow Chief DeArmit to be more of a supervisor of the operation, more of an operationals manager, actually move to Fire Station 1 and office there, and importantly, keep up with our training requirements for our growing department. Still on the subject of community safety and still on the subject of the fire department is the idea, and this is not a significant investment, to have our own medical director and no longer share medical director responsibilities with other jurisdictions. The argument we're making there is that we would benefit from a more intimate relationship with a medical director who spends time with us. We think it is a community advantage for us to become a first responder organization. While we're not in the EMS business directly, as a Bastrop Fire Department, we are very often the first paramedic staff on the scene, and in a community where a 10-minute response time is considered standard for our EMS service, we need to have our own protocols, and we can save lives if we pay attention to that. We have 28 body cameras that are in use in the police department. They are becoming obsolete. They aren't any longer manufactured. We are about to see the end of the warranty period, and so this budget includes funding to replace all of them. And from a public works perspective, we need to replace signage that we use for work zone safety, and that's in the budget as well. Changing our priority area to fiscal responsibility, and there's quite a bit here, as would make sense, since after all we're talking about the budget. And I'll spend a little bit of time on this first bullet point and show council some numbers later. The tax rate that I am recommending is the same nominal tax rate as what is the current tax rate at about 57 cents per $100 of valuation. And as council knows, that total nominal, and what I mean by nominal is the tax rate that shows up on a person's tax bill, the actual formulaic rate, 57 cents per $100 of valuation, is comprised of both an operations and maintenance component. That's one component, and the other component is debt. Because of the significant increase in appraised values that we and every other city in the region has experienced this tax year, that has the function or the impact of lowering the tax rate we need for O&M to generate the same amount of revenues to run the city. And that tax rate is going down by a couple of pennies. My recommendation is that we take that savings, if you will, on the operations and maintenance side, and we apply that to the debt side. So the total tax rate stays the same. The O&M piece goes down a bit. And again, I'll share the actual numbers with you here in a bit. And the debt piece goes up. And council, you know, we have talked about building a capital plan. We've talked about potentially planning for a bond election that would fund new capital projects in fiscal '24. It makes sense to me if we're looking at funding a citywide street reconstruction program, which we've talked about, if we need debt financing to complete the funding mix to renovate the old Iron Bridge. Should we decide we're going to put general government funds in a recreation center, all of these are identified in our current capital plan, then it makes sense. I think it's a wise move for us to retain some capacity on the debt side of our taxing equation. And so that's kind of a long-term way of thinking about it. In the shorter term, what we would do with that additional debt service resource is ask council to consider, just similar to what you did this last fiscal year, a short-term debt note, say 7 to 10 years, and we still have some math to do on all of that. And our preliminary numbers indicate that that would generate about $3.6 million in cash, and it would be our suggestion that we pour that cash into street rehabilitation work. And again, council, we did talk about this a little bit on May 14th. What we're envisioning here is a stopgap mechanism that fits between the ongoing street maintenance work we do, which is about $600,000, $700,000 a year. That's the resurfacing, chip sealing, routine street maintenance work. That's one thing where the phrase we use is we try to keep the good streets good, where we're trying to keep water out of the base so that streets don't deteriorate to the point where a full depth repair is your only option. So that's what we're doing with that. In a few years, we would suggest a significant bond program to take care of those streets that have failed to the point where a full depth reconstruction is your only option. In between are a mill and overlay kind of treatments where we're not replacing sidewalks, we're not replacing utilities, or we're not making significant drainage improvements. We're just taking care of the surface. A great example of a street that we would treat as first priority is Old Austin Highway. The $3.6 million we have in mind here would do more than Old Austin Highway, but we would recommend a decision-making approach that I'll talk to just a little bit later to determine what those other locations would be. So I know I've talked a lot about all of that, but the bottom line is we're recommending a reduction in the tax rate on the O&M side, replacing that with a bit of an increase on the debt side. That increase in the short term provides $3.6 million, and what we would suggest we do with that is much needed street rehabilitation work. Next bullet point there is water and wastewater improvements funded with the American Rescue Plan. Council, we've had some conversation about this before. The American Rescue Plan will provide a little over $2 million to the city of Bastrop. Water and wastewater improvements are very clearly eligible funding for that. For months, we've been waiting for more direction from the federal or the state government about how the American Rescue Plan dollars will work. We have fairly recently received more information. We now know that the Texas Division of Emergency Management, which is a function of the governor's office, will administer the program. That's cool. We're used to dealing with TDM on things like this. Us and everybody else in the state I think are used to dealing with TDM on things like this. And we now know we have a first deadline of information we need to submit on August 2nd. And Tracy and her team are all over that along with our grant consultants. So we're still following that plan to allocate that $2 million to water and sewer projects, and that we think makes eminent sense, that benefits everybody in the community in an equitable kind of way. Later on, I'll talk about the need to increase the wastewater side of our water and sewer rates. So anything we can, and Council, you know the extent to which we're making significant investments in wastewater treatment and water treatment, and a concern, something we need to pay a lot of attention to over the next few years, is keeping all that affordable. So taking that $2 million and helping mitigate future rate impacts seems to make sense. Still under fiscal responsibility, just the idea that we do fiscal forecasting, I think is significant, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. This budget suggests a bit of a different approach to the community support funding. Council, at your last meeting, you heard all of those requests. What isn't different is that the electric fund is still providing the funding for this. What is different is the idea that the electric fund isn't directly providing for that. What we think makes more sense, and this is reflected in our updated fiscal forecast, is the electric fund provide a transfer to the general fund, and we fund those community support operations out of the general fund. I think that's more appropriate. These functions ought to compete with every other opportunity for general fund funding. And for many, many years, I think it's safe to say we've treated the electric fund as a bit of a cash cow. The numbers certainly indicate that we can't continue to do that. We've been spending more than we take in the electric fund for a few years. That trend isn't changing, and in fact, most recently after the winter storm, that's been exacerbated, and I'll show you some actual numbers about that later. And I think structuring the funding this way gives us a better opportunity to pay attention to what the electric fund is actually paying for. We pay attention to the development revenue that we've received this last fiscal year. We've received a lot of revenue over our budgeted amount. I know that's not very quantified, a lot, but it is a lot. We are not counting on that recurring at that same level over the next several years. So the point here is to let you know that we don't treat all of that surplus of funds as a recurring revenue source that we ought to pay for police and fire and public works operations out of. That is more suited for one-time uses and not relied upon for recurring expenses. And so as a fiscal responsibility thing, we're pointing that out. Still under the category of fiscal responsibility, and I did mention the meeting that we've got scheduled with Visit Bastrop on August the 30th. You will hear later on this evening Tracy give you the monthly report. Tracy's been a bit of a broken record these last few monthly reports. We're doing great in all of our funding sources with the exception of hotel-motel revenues. Hotel-motel revenues are projected to be still below pre-COVID levels for fiscal '22. That does have impact on the amount of funding that's available for Visit Bastrop. We've had good conversations with Executive Director Smith and members of her board over the last few weeks about what to do about that, and look forward to talking to council in more detail about that on August 30th. But there will be impacts in some decision making that needs to be made on what we do about that, and we'll continue to look at the City Council's reserve policies for the hotel-motel fund as we go. Managed water treatment plant and, I'm sorry, that should say wastewater treatment and water plant funding. I mentioned this already. We are making a recommendation that we increase the base wastewater fee to cover the debt associated with the wastewater treatment plant. We do have a fairly elaborate and even complicated rate model that Tracy spends a lot of time with that drives our decision making. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we have the fiscal forecast in front of us. I mentioned our street maintenance and street improvements work a little bit earlier. One of the things we want to do this next fiscal year is update the paving index. It is best practice to do that every 3 years or so because cities grow and street conditions change. The idea here, council, is that the streets we decide to work on an annual basis really ought to be an objective process more than subjective. It's really not about who lives on the street or even geographic issues. It really ought to be about what streets need it the most, and the paving condition index gives us that kind of data. And a couple of weeks ago, council, you saw a report from the police department on the leasing of police vehicles. We do think that makes a lot of sense. We're actually asking you to vote on that later tonight. So now changing subjects a bit to a different council priority, economic vitality. Council, there are several projects in the budget for which we are seeking funds from our Type B sales tax funds that are administered by the Economic Development Corporation. There's been a couple of workshops so far this budget cycle to talk with the Economic Development Corporation about this. Council, I think you're familiar with all of these things. Agnes Street Extension, we're very interested in looking at the extent to which our Bastrop Power and Light utility can be a broadband provider. I think that's good for the community. I think that could fiscally be really good for Bastrop Power and Light. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. I do not consider myself an expert in all of the decision-making here, but it does seem clear that the next step would be to do that feasibility study to do a preliminary assessment of the math and see the extent to which that works. Downtown lighting is an idea that came out of the Main Street Advisory Board. And again, just yesterday we had a discussion about that with the EDC. Council, you're familiar with the planned improvements to the extension of Technology Drive. That's been in the works for a few years. That project is a little short of funding, and the capital plan calls for that to be dealt with this next fiscal year. Now, on the managed growth priority, this budget includes an update of the land use plan, and you heard a presentation from Jennifer Bills on this last May. A comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016. Again, best practice would call for a review of specific elements of that plan every 5 years. Our suggestion is we focus on the land use plan. Already funded, not asking for additional funding for the update, for the creation of a drainage master plan. There have been studies of drainage areas in Bastrop over the last few years, but not a comprehensive analysis, and this part is key. What we're suggesting happen is we look at this study to point to new capital projects, and I mentioned wastewater plant construction and water plant design, both of which are on schedule and happening well. Under the category of managing growth, I know there's been a lot of discussion about this. There are 2 positions in this budget recommended to go to the planning and development area. One is a code enforcement position. I remember Councilmember Peterson asking me about code enforcement about a year ago. We do have a very difficult time keeping up with code enforcement in general, and this will certainly help. The other position we are adding to the planning department is an administrative position, so that our administrators and decision makers like Jennifer and Shirley and Allison and Viviana aren't spending quite as much time with administrative details, and I think that'll help a lot. It is difficult to annex in the state of Texas nowadays, but fortunately we have a few development agreements out there with properties, and we are looking to develop more development agreements with property owners north of here, near where we are planning and designing our water treatment plant. It is important that we are prepared to implement those development agreements from an annexation standpoint, and I think it's $45,000 we're asking to be included in this year's budget for professional services to help us with the details of, a lot of this is surveying work, to get that work done, so when we're ready to pull the trigger on those already agreed to annexations to the benefit of the city, we can do that. Multi-modal mobility is another focus area. We continue to spend still unspent funds from that the old red light camera funds that still exist. This has been a pretty popular program for the last year or so to add sidewalk improvements through town. We continue to pursue funding of the Old Iron Bridge. I'm glad Assistant City Manager Joe walked into the room for that. He is spending a considerable amount of his time making sure he's talking to the right people, putting the right grant applications together. We are approaching this from a lot of different federal, state, and local angles, and the budget document includes some detail on that. And we continue to fund the carts to the tune of about $30,000, not about, exactly $30,000 in this budget. Organizational excellence is another priority area. We have about $70,000 in this proposed budget to improve software that will improve the efficiency of both the city secretary's office and the finance department. Our financial software is awfully old and antiquated and takes up a lot of Tracy's time. That could be a lot more efficient. Our agenda development process is about 20 years behind where it could be. And I've been through this kind of process improvement before in council. I think you'd be surprised the extent to which the product gets better from the result of having up-to-date software. Not a lot of money for that, but it's be well worth it. We're adding a few hours to our HR generalist. There's a lot of training priorities to help keep up with. Council gave us that idea back in May, and that will be helpful. Every year, Council, you see a racial profiling report that's required by law, presented by Chief Nagy. The suggestion here is that we put a few dollars towards having a third-party review those and audit those racial profiling reports. They're actually pretty complicated to put together, and we think this would be a good accountability and transparency thing for us to do. You're already familiar with the compensation improvements that were recommended by a compensation study we did earlier this spring and was presented to council by HR Director Cantrell. And so this budget would implement more of those recommendations in terms of salary improvements. There weren't step increases in the current fiscal year budget, but the next fiscal year we recommend bringing that back. Fairly significant is a new recommendation that the city participate in the health benefit costs for city employees with dependents. We are behind the market on that, and I have plenty of anecdotal evidence just in the year I've been that has been a factor in our ability to recruit people to work, people with families to work for the city of Bastrop. Our health benefits costs are expensive. They're getting more expensive. We're seeing an 8% rate increase this next fiscal year. That was disappointing because our rates, I think, are already high. I think we have a very competent consultant that helps us with this. We looked at a lot of different angles for what we could do to mitigate those costs. We did recommend some plan design changes that frankly don't benefit our employees. So deductibles go up, co-pays go up, but just like everyone else, we're really struggling to manage those costs. The real problem is we've had a bad loss ratio year. We've had a few medical catastrophes among the workforce these last few months that have driven costs up and consequently drive our premiums up. A work item for the future is to develop some workable wellness initiatives for city employees to hopefully drive those costs down. It's a problem, and we need to solve it. I mentioned this earlier, plan review and construction management. I don't think it makes sense to chase the additional workload by hiring inspection and plan review staff. My experience here is that it makes perfect sense to contract out for those kinds of services, to contract that out with contractors who are in the business of making sure their employees are well paid and certified and accountable to our our strict guidelines for turning work around. And council, you know this. If we call for an inspection by 3 o'clock on a weekday, that inspection is contractually required to happen that next day, and that does consistently happen. Uniquely Bastrop, here's where we'll talk again about that full-time recreation management. We look forward to making that a full-time position. We have been served very ably on a contract basis by Ms. Terry Moore these last few months. One of the things we would ask this full-time person to do, just kind of segue into that next bullet point, is to oversee the development of our Parks Master Plan update. Here again, we've got a Parks Master Plan that is over 5 years old. We are not eligible for funding assistance from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department as long as our plan is more than 5 years old. We think that Parks Master Plan can have a lot of important elements to it. Element one is just a plain old Parks Master Plan that looks at our stepping in more fully into the Parks and Recreation business. I am thinking a good approach is that Parks Master Plan also include as a sub-element a feasibility study of the sports complex that's identified in the EDC's strategic plan that was developed in 2020, recognizing that the EDC is still working through that strategic plan, but to the extent that remains a priority, an important next step would be a feasibility study for that. And to the extent we're interested in all of this being grant funded, it's important that we do a countywide needs assessment. Currently, we provide recreation program services not only to Bastrop residents, but to Bastrop County residents as well. And we think that makes sense, and certainly that puts us in a position for grant funding. It is our turn next spring to host the MLK event, and so we've got additional dollars programmed in this budget to make sure that event is as grand as it should be. And this budget also includes various playground equipment replacements, including, council, the splash pad, which I know we have heard a little bit about over the last few months. The splash pad surface is deteriorated and does need to be replaced. It will cost over $50,000 to do that, kind of incredibly expensive to do that. This budget, though, does include funds for that. And still under Uniquely Bastrop, I mentioned the Old Iron Bridge already. We have funded out of BPNL, again, as a sponsorship for the Chamber's annual Patriotic Fest, the fireworks display. We have funded that at the tune of $25,000. I am told that fireworks displays are more expensive than that nowadays, and in response to that, this budget includes a total of $30,000 for the annual fireworks display sponsored by BPNL. And Councilmember Peterson, we haven't forgotten, we still need to develop a plan for the Julius Thomas Memorial, and still looking forward to putting together something to show council on that here shortly. So under unique environment, council, you have several designated funds in the budget. They're listed in the budget document. As a matter of routine, Tracy includes appropriations from those funds so that if something comes up during the year that makes sense for us to spend those funds on, we are typically ready to do that. A particular idea for this next fiscal year is that we use the funds that we have currently and we will receive this fiscal year from the leasing of the property in Fisherman's Park for the canoe and kayak rental, that we take those funds and refurbish the river overlooks along the trail in Fisherman's Park. If you've been down there recently and you've walked on those overlooks, they are in significant need of refurbishment, and so the recommendation here is that we spend funds to refurbish those overlooks. Don't think it'll do all of them, but it will do the worst of them. We also have a Fairview Cemetery fund for operating activities, and we've got funds budgeted to take care of an erosion control problem from that hill. It's become pretty bad, and we need to spend some funds to shore that up. All right, Council, you cannot read that. It is on page 28 in your newly handed out book. And if you'd like to follow along, I don't plan to spend a whole lot of time on this, but just to point out some things on the general fund fiscal forecast assumptions. We do continue to make conservative projections for general fund revenues moving forward. We're not at all blind to the growth that's out there. We do have some numbers plugged in that reflect that growth. From a sales tax perspective, and that's probably of significant impact, this fiscal year we're projecting a 10% increase over fiscal 21 projected. Thank you, Tracy. Knew I was about to struggle with that, and so she mouthed it for me. And for years after that, we are going back to a 5% revenue increase sales tax. Given the typical volatility associated with sales tax, I think that makes sense. On the expense side, we are projecting some salary savings. I'm not budgeting for any salary savings in fiscal 22. Council, we've done a pretty good job of filling vacant positions these last few months, especially in the police department. I think we're one hire away in the police department from being fully staffed there, which is pretty cool. We do have some vacancies still in public works, but for the most part, they're on the utility side. I don't expect that to always be the case, and so in out years, we do anticipate some vacancy savings, and it's smart to include those in future year projections. If you'll flip to page 29 to see the actual fiscal forecast, I'll point some things out there that I think are relevant. The good news is recurring revenues do exceed recurring expenses every year. That's important information for bond rating agencies. That's always question number one. Question number two is, what about your reserve policies? And Council, according to this, again, very conservative forecast, beginning in fiscal 24, we fall below reserve policies. And so as you're making tax rate decisions on the O&M side moving forward, I think it's important to keep that in mind. I think this is all very manageable at this point, but certainly for next fiscal year's purposes, that's something we'll want to continue to pay attention to. Moving to the Water and Wastewater Fund, now I'm looking at a graph that's in your budget book on page 34. We do anticipate some additional growth. The thing about the water and wastewater utility is that over the next few years, we will increase the extent to which we serve people who don't live in the city of Bastrop, non-city residents. Here you'll see reflected what I mentioned earlier. We are suggesting an increase to the base rates of $5 a year for the next 3 years. And again, that's intended to keep up with the debt service burden associated with the wastewater plant. Nothing of any real consequence on the expense side. Then on page 35 is the Water Wastewater Fund summary. We're looking at a small deficit in fiscal 22, even with the rate increase on the water wastewater side, where expenses are slightly exceeding revenues, but then we catch up again in fiscal 23. Here the reserve requirement is 35%, and again at the end of fiscal 22, we do dip below that slightly, again, even with the recommended rate increase. We are cutting that as thin as we think we can, is the way I would summarize that. And then on page 32 in your budget book is the Bastrop Power and Light fiscal forecast assumptions. Nothing too significant there except for what's happening with the bill we received from LCRA after Tropical Storm Uri. The good news is that $936,000 bill that they first gave us has now been reduced by about $300,000. And yes, that is good news. We did anticipate that we might get some credits, and we heard from LCRA last week that that was indeed the case. And so while that's good news, the forecast for BP&L isn't as rosy as we would like for it to be. At the end of fiscal 22, we do project to be just below the reserve requirement, and that only gets worse in the out years. And we are spending a bit more than we are taking in, which again isn't new for this fund. We are not recommending a rate increase for fiscal 22 for our electric customers, but unless this picture changes, Council, I don't think we'll be able to not have a rate increase next fiscal year. And I'll go back to something I said earlier. I think it does make sense for us to be looking at BP&L as a business. We are landlocked, and it's important for us to be thinking about keeping that viable without relying on rate increases. All right, so sorry to make you read all of those very difficult graphs, but hopefully that was a decent summary going on. I've got just a few more graphs to share with you. These are a little bit easier to read, but if you're following along in the book, this graph is on page 11, and it shows the impact on the general fund revenue side, the increase in sales tax revenues, the increase in ad valorem or property tax revenues, the increase in licenses and permits. That's where the development-related fees are. Again, and that increase has been significant. And then other, which is sundry other revenues, that has remained essentially unchanged. So you see the extent to which the revenue picture is significantly increasing for fiscal 22. And then to break that down a bit more on the property tax side, this graph that you're now looking at on the screen is on page 12 in your budget book. And I think this reflects some pretty interesting information. Yes, property tax revenues are going up 17%, fiscal 21 to fiscal 22. And you can break that increase down into two categories. What is in the maroon color represents the increase in revenues that's a function of new growth. This is new properties on the rolls, either new properties or new redeveloped properties that didn't exist during the prior tax year. That's important because state law treats that very differently from the other category, the light blue category, which is new revenues that is there solely as a result of new appraisals. That's where state law imposes a 3.5% annual increase cap maximum on what we can set a tax rate for and budget for. We are below that cap this fiscal year, but you can see that that's a significant part of the revenue increase. And so this chart highlights and gives you some numbers behind what I was saying earlier when I described the shift between the O&M rate and the debt rate. Here, the O&M rate is shown in green, and you see the trends for the last few years. You see where we're keeping the total tax rate, 0.5794, the same. The debt rate, though, is going from 19 cents to about 20.5 cents. Again, that leverages $3.6 million in new cash that I suggest we put into street rehabilitation. And then in green, the O&M rate is going from 38 cents to 37 cents. And again, that's reflective of the increase in new appraisals. So we're reducing the tax rate and we're still seeing a increase in new revenues from new appraisals of about 3%. So how does this impact the Bastrop taxpayer? if that Bastrop taxpayer just happens to live in the average valued home in Bastrop, that average valued home this tax year is $224,000. Last year, it was $210,000 approximately. And so if you're comparing the tax burden to the city of Bastrop, O&M and debt, based on the average valued home, the mean average, that increase is $83 per year. The average valued home, according to this tax rate, would owe to the city of Bastrop $1,300 this next fiscal year, which I would argue is a pretty good deal. So tax burden by taxing entity, oftentimes I have people call me and say, hey, I pay $20,000 a year in taxes to the city of Bastrop, and I say, well, probably not. You probably pay about $1,100 a year in taxes to the city of Bastrop. You're thinking of the total tax bill you pay, and here this chart breaks down that the city of Bastrop's portion of that is about 23%, and the other major categories are reflected on that pie chart, and that's on page 14 in your budget book. And then here, finally, mercifully, finally, is the tax rate information that I've already summarized for fiscal 22. I am recommending a total property tax rate of 0.794. The no new revenue tax rate that state law has us calculate is about 3 pennies less than that. For the M&O part of that, that's 0.36. The M&O rate I'm recommending is 0.374, which is about 3%, right, Tracy, over the no new revenue rate. And council, that 3% number is important because state law, again, limits us to 3.5%. So we're about 0.5% under the state law mandated cap. If we could go up to 0.5957 before the voters needed to approve that. And again, you see the increase in the debt rate from 19 cents to 20 cents. And you've already heard me describe why we're recommending that. And so here's a chart on sales tax that shows the trend since 2013 and the very healthy trend we've seen in sales tax revenues. That is one of the reasons why we're comfortable in stepping out with the significant sales tax revenue increase that we're recommending in this budget. And I mentioned in summary earlier the personnel additions. There are 6 new positions. Council, I don't remember ever in my career ever recommending 6 new positions in one budget year, but I do think all of these are very justified. The 2 positions in police, the 1 in fire, the 2 in planning and development, and the 1 recreation manager. Again, that's a function that's been filled on a part-time contractual basis, and this budget recommends we do that permanently and full-time. Thank you for listening. And let's talk about questions. So I know that was a lot. You might have questions tonight. You don't need to have questions tonight. Don't feel compelled. I am happy to visit with each of you individually just to talk, and you can say, hey, Paul, there's something about the budget I don't understand. Well, let's sit down and let's talk about it. Very happy to do that. I find those kinds of meetings typically very productive. Please also submit written questions to me, and we'll make sure those written questions get answered. We'll make sure the entire council has the benefit of that question and the answer. We'll spend time at a budget workshop talking about those questions and answers. And speaking of budget workshops, I mentioned this earlier, but here I'm going to break out an agenda a bit. Budget workshop number 1, August 17th, so we're a few weeks away. Their council, I'd like to go over specifically the funding request for the community assets. You'll be hearing from them later tonight, and the community support request from from 2 weeks ago. The budget document does have my recommendations for what that funding is. And again, if you want to talk about that one-on-one, happy to do it. I am not showing you a 5-year capital plan tonight. What's in this budget book is a 1-year capital budget. You saw a draft of a 5-year capital plan back in May. We'll bring that 5-year plan to you and go over that in some detail on August 17th. I know you've got questions about fees. The issue that was raised by Ms. Chapin and the $350 fee that is currently charged for food trucks. We do have some thoughts about how to manage that for future special events. And so that and some development-related fees have been amended. We did not do a wholesale review of all of our fees. The city did that just a couple of years ago, but we did look at correcting some things, and we can go through that in detail on August 17th. And again, any questions you have, and then if we need it, we can meet that next evening to finish up on August 18th. August 30th, we've talked about your required by state law public hearings are scheduled for September 14th. We'll ask you to vote on first reading on the 14th, second reading on the 21st. And again, as mentioned earlier, if we stick other stuff on that September 21st agenda, we don't need to meet on the 28th. Thank you.
Okay, council, there'll be a pop test now? No, just kidding. Thank you, city manager. Good job. Thank you, staff. I know these don't just automatically come together, and I know council appreciates the opportunity to review this and not be trying to do it off the cuff. I did want to ask one really quick question. On the last 3 pages, there are red marks on the fee. Is this recommended updates from staff? Is that how we should review those?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Council, any general questions? It is 5 till 8. Does anyone need a 3-minute break? Or are you ready to rock and roll? Mr. Peterson says rock and roll. Everybody okay? Oh, Councilmember Jackson says we'll be taking a 5-minute break. It is 7:55 and we're going to take a 5-minute break. All right, Colin, let me know when you're ready. We're good? Okay, it is 8 o'clock and we are back in regular session. Council, we are towards the bottom of page 2. We're at staff and reports, and we'll be starting with item 9A, receive a presentation on the unaudited monthly financial report. Ms. Waldron.
Well, I'll be consistently boring with June's report. Same old, same old, same old. General fund is very strong. Sales tax is very strong, positive 21% over our forecast. Development fees are about $1 million over our budgeted year to date. Hot funds are still struggling, 30% below forecast due to COVID effects of tourism industry. That number does continue to go down slowly. I changed it from 31 to 30, so it just keeps that gap keeps closing. Capital funds, broken record, interest rates really aren't seeing as much as we had projected. And the debt service that you see has to do with the refunding transaction. So we have money coming in and then we have money going out. It's just a refunding transaction. So that pretty much covers all my slides. If you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Ms. Waldron. Council, I think that the thing that's worth noting, because we just saw from the presentation that there's a shift between M&O and debt service. If there is ever a time to go get some debt dollars, it's when the interest rates are as favorably as they are right now. So that's a part of the strategy. So got to make hay while the sun's shining on that deal. Council, any questions for Ms. Waldron? Councilmember Rogers, did you have a question?
I just wanted to thank you for putting the percentage of the hot funds on there from the year prior. So it's hard to hear. So I wanted to say thank you for adding that at the bottom of your comments.
You're welcome. Great job. Thank you very much. All right, council, we're moving on to item 9B, receive quarterly report from Visit Bastrop. Ms. Smith.
Good evening, everyone. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so this is our third quarter report covering the months of April, May, and June. So I'm not going to tell you who my car pick was in July for the Corvette Invasion until next quarter. So there we have our collaboration that counts. This is, these are our highlights of some of our engagements and stakeholder events that we've taken part in. And I think one of the newest ones that we've done is forming a partnership with our real estate agents and our developers to be sure that they let new folks coming into town know what we have to offer and all of the great things that their friends and family can take advantage of while they're here. We're trying to come here. We're jumping right into our sales results. You asked last quarter, Council Member Rogers, that we put in last year's amounts, so we did that. So our year-to-date quantity for leads is 53, room nights 13,000, roughly 15,000 attendees, and that compares to 45 leads from last year. So as you can see, our lead business is increasing. Was more demand for people wanting to book meetings and events. We had 83 partner outreach calls and 539 sales calls. So the definites that we had year to date are 23 and 4,000 room nights. I want to make a correction that was discovered today. There was an error in the report pulling. Last year's quantity was actually 30 definites, 4,000 room nights, and 8,126 attendees. So I just want to make that correction for you here. So yeah, okay, it was a big difference. Also, you'll note on the same thing here. Here's our return on investment. This is where we take our booked business and we put it into an economic impact calculator, and it tells us what our economic impact is year to date. And that number will change also because of the number in the definites that I just mentioned. So the economic impact for the year to date for booked business is 4.7 million, and the leads generated remains the same. So recovery, since this printing for meeting planner sentiments as well as our leisure traveler, since this printing we have seen a little bit of concern around the Delta variant. We've also noticed and have seen and heard some decreased feelings of safety that have led to a decline in some of the normal travel that we had normal travel returning trends that we had expected. So there's a little bit of concern there. I will say that for our hoteliers that we have not seen any big impact on them. And also small towns are continuing to rank in the recovery. So we're still good. We haven't seen any real big changes in any of our bookings or anything like that at the moment. And our travel sentiments, again, back up to safety of others, safety of ourselves, and our COVID-19, the variants. So we are going to be pushing our Safe, Clean, and Ready initiatives again with our visitors and pushing that forth on our website. So I'm going to turn this over to Ashton, who will go over the marketing summary for the last 3 months.
Question before
Yes, ma'am.
you leave, Mayor, is that all right? When you, on your last slide about recovery, are you thinking that people feel safer going to smaller towns now instead of like going into like
the
the
large
big ones
cities.
like Dallas or things? The smaller towns are making me, okay. I just want to make sure that's what I thought you were
Yeah, and
saying.
this is just occurred, like, these reports have been out just like in the
Which
last
is
week
a
or
good-
so.
'cause we're
So it's
small town.
very new. I mean, it could change tomorrow.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, Council, City Manager. To piggyback on that, I think also too, Drusilla, one thing that we've noticed is that people are more inclined to go to places that are posting their safety protocols. So like Susan mentioned with the resurfacing of, the Delta variant, we're making sure that that safety information is top, front, and center on our website, because we know that that makes people feel a little bit better when they're traveling if they can read what the rules are of those destinations. Okay, we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes here. Everything that we do in the marketing world for Visit Bastrop is tied to a metric. So we are tracking everything quarter by quarter. You'll see what we do for public relations, our website, our 2020 actuals, our goals for the next year, and then how we have trended across each quarter. So you'll notice some items we've already met our goals for the year. Some items are well on their way, and a few items need a little additional push on our end to get us through to the end of the year. Again, these same metrics, this is social media and our newsletters. So again, trending, some of the things are trending well, some of them need a little push on our end. But nothing really alarming. Everything's well on its way. Q3 website overview, you'll see a 6-month rolling history here, year to date, but we're gonna focus in on that April, May, June there. 2020, we all know was a weird year, so we have thrown in that 2019 baseline to kind of see how we're trending against the pre-COVID numbers, and we're doing quite well. We have some seasonal ebb and flow, which we're accustomed to 3 years in, and we're trending right below that 2019 baseline, so recovering quite well, and we'll see how we go through the end of the year. Paid search, Google Ads, we run ads through Google, so people type in, their relative search terms, and we try to populate Visit Bastrop ads. So we have campaigns in those categories there, and they perform very well. The Things to Do, obviously, is a great campaign. There was a slight dip in some of ours, and we dig into those, and some of them are just simply being captured in other areas. There was a decrease in outdoor, but we dug into that, and it's actually being captured in our Things to Do category. So great performance on paid search. And just some relative search terms that if you're ever curious of what are prompting those ads, these are what people are typing into the Google search bar. Tour Texas is our main digital advertisement for the year. We have a very robust profile on Tour Texas. It's highly visited by people who are looking to explore places in Texas, and we're lucky because we're a B, so we get up there in alphabetical order, and then we've got lots of built-out pages. Our overview, our return on that investment for the quarter is 442 requests for visitors guides. We've had 40 people visit our website. And roughly 1,000 people view that content through Tour Texas, and then about 300 people have viewed our video. And a little added value for June, we had a little extra digital ad there, so I threw it in for you guys to see. Our April blog recap, we had 2 blogs, one highlighting craft beer and the reasons to visit Bastrop. 5 minutes and 22 seconds people read about craft beer. I think that's the top performing blog we've had to date. May blog recap. In June. Those metrics aren't attached. We'll bring those to you in the next quarterly report. Q3 recap. These are just a lot of our ongoing initiatives, but I will call out that we have a call for content where we email everybody in the hospitality industry, and we're looking for content. Let us know what's happening. We've spoke with Lori Chapin about homecoming, and so now we have all that information on our website, hoping to get some more visibility around it. We were featured in 58 pieces of coverage, earned coverage by Visit Bastrop's efforts. There's obviously things that occur outside of that threshold, but 58 pieces generated by us. Press releases. This was a press release for Summer in the City. Proactive outreach. We work with publications to try and get Bastrop coverage, people to write articles about us, and so AAA Texas events and meetings, birding podcasts, we pitch Bastrop and content for them to write about, and then we'll get into some of that coverage here in a little bit. So secured coverage here from that proactive outreach. There's, I think, 19 pages of secured coverage that we generated in Q3. So I'm going to click through all that, but we include it for you guys so that you can browse through it. And then we also do quite a few event listings for the events that we know about that are happening. So good coverage for Summer in the City. and good coverage for the Bastrop Patriotic Festival. This is our print overview. We have run one print ad this year, and it's a full-page ad in Texas Highways magazine. They circulate that to over 177,000 people. We also have rolled out the Go Bastrop Savings Card. We find that during events, the people who are here for the events, they like the incentives, and we've kind of done this program event by event, and so we thought we would just implement this savings program for all year long. So this is live, and it is, you can buy it as the local, but we also give these to events. So, for example, the Corvette Invasion just recently came in, and we gave out 400 Go Savings cards to those participants and encourage them to scan the back of the QR code, find the savings, and go get your savings. So we've partnered with all of the hospitality and a lot of the restaurants, boutiques, shops, anyone who wants us to give us a discount or an incentive to get those meeting planners and attendees into the businesses in our community. So it's a really fun project. It's very new, but you can buy it as a local. For events, the time frame is about 2 weeks, so you get a card. You don't get to come back 6 months later and use it. But for locals, if you buy the card for $15, you get to keep it for a year and redeem those savings all year long. And then we also have our Q3 newsletter report. This guy's killer. It does a great job. We sent the leisure newsletter to about 1,200 people and double-digit open rates, far surpassing the industry average. And that's it. If you guys have any questions for me.
Council, any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yeah, do y'all see the trends being a continuation as due to the uncertainty, the trends being just day trips or close-in trips rather than people taking longer vacations? I don't know if it's the price of airline tickets or what all, but just day trips.
I think that our sweet spot is the day trip. It's that drive market is what we call it. So a lot of the interest that we find on our website comes from Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio. So that's where we really focus our marketing efforts. We don't forget about the other guys, but we know that those people are interested because of the way we monitor the website, and so we will, in return, market to them.
Outstanding, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great job. All right, Council, moving on to item 9C, receive quarterly report from BEDC. Ms. Young.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members and Grandpa City Manager. Congratulations for joining the ranks of the grandparents. I have 4 grandchildren, and the joy they bring to our family every day is endless. So I know you're going to enjoy it. And I will keep this brief. Please know that I'm about as technical as a number 2 pencil, so we could be skipping around here. But I have been with the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation for just about a full quarter, so I will apologize and state I recognize these as quarter 1 and 2, which is January, February, March, April, May, and June. It's very exciting here. Lots going on in our community. The Art Institute is open now. I want to thank Councilman Jimmy Crouch for working with us as we worked through that process. And I also want to say thank you to Jean and Angela at the EDC and to AI for being in our community. I want to welcome all of the staff over at AI, and we are very happy that they are open for class as of July the 12th. Whoops. Sorry. There it is. And also, sales tax continue an upward trend, which has not been the case for some communities. I know COVID was very challenging for some. And I will point out to you, too, in your packet, you have one incorrect number. The slide is corrected for you, so what is on the screen is accurate. Under 2021 first quarter BEDC, that number is actually $776,096, and in your packet, I believe my fingers were engaged before my brain joined the party, so that there's a little bit of difference there. And the reason that I presented this for you is so that you can see a comparison between 2020 and 2021 side by side for what is reported at the Comptroller's office from the city and then what is paid to the Economic Development Corporation. You'll see a slight dip in 2020 due to COVID is what we believe that slight dip is in decrease in sales tax collections for the city, but it was very slight. If you really look across the board, y'all did very well, or EDC, and I mean the city and the EDC did very well. Your sales tax continued to do well, and they're trending upward again in 2021. You can see a side-by-side comparison there. I'm pushing the button. There we go. There is a new tool on the BEDC website, and I changed it to Simplified, but the actual name, the software is Simplify, and it's spelled capital R-E, capital S-I-M-P-L-I-F-I, Simplify. And it's a new tool on our webpage that anyone listing or has property for sale can actually go on, get a log on name and account, and go in and list their properties on the site. I believe it went live in June. If you have difficulties, I would encourage you to contact the EDC office and ask for Angela Ryan. She is our in-house expert and works very closely with Golden Shovel on posting those items. So for the activities of the economic development staff, I can tell you my first day in the office, we met with Congressman Michael Cloud in May, had a very nice conversation with him. He is very engaged and delightful to speak with. He had a staff member with him also, and I think we had a really nice conversation with him. The staff attended the Best Countywide Mixer at Spiderwood Studios in May. We then hosted the Best Breakfast at 602 Brewery, and the topics also obviously included the excitement around Tesla and the possible impacts and what we see happening, what we believe is attached to the Tesla project. I'm the interim executive director for BEDC, and I have been very fortunate to attend the Development Review Committee, or DRC, meetings with the city staff in hopes of learning and trying to understand the development process. And I will say thank you very much to the staff for allowing me to sit in on those meetings and to provide the information they have provided. I also sit in on some of the actual project meetings with developers in the afternoons, and those are usually held on Thursdays. And I found those to be very informative. I serve as a Texas ambassador for the Business Retention Expansion International, or otherwise known as BREI, and at their virtual conference this year in June, I was honored to serve on a panel with various ambassadors from across the United States and Canada. Jean Riemann-Schneider is actually attending right now the Career and Technical Association of Texas, or CTAT, and she is a presenter tomorrow and will be presenting information on the work that BEDC does in workforce development, and also the partnership with the Bastrop Independent School District for the Youth and Career Day, which was presented here. And I have some numbers on that. It was very impressive to be a virtual presentation. The numbers were quite impressive, if I can put my hands on those. I believe they had over 700 attendees for this event, 710 attendees, 299 chat messages, 44 resumes were submitted, and there were 52 jobs posted. And this was the first time they had done a virtual meeting. Hopefully we can do those things live in the future. I noticed that the conversation on tourism, we are starting to see, I know, in economic development conferences go live again, and I think you will see that somewhat in the tourism industry as well, and I think that's hopeful. On, let's see. I was recently appointed to the Capital Area Economic Development District Committee, otherwise given an acronym, everything we do in economic development and tourism has an acronym. So the only thing I don't know of is an acronym society, and I'm thinking we should maybe start one of those. But I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Nelson for opening that door and introducing me to the association, so that to CapCog, so that we could participate there. I registered today for an event on August the 12th, which is about broadband and funding for broadband and other sources. So thank you very much for that introduction. We recently, the city staff recently, I told you I'm about as technical as a number 2 pencil, but for some reason this is, there we go. The BEDC staff worked this last month with the city manager and assistant city manager to plan for the joint city council and BEDC meeting, which we held in July. I think it was very successful. I know I learned a lot from the dialogue between both the board and the council, and I feel like we are headed in a positive direction. And Mayor, you may have comments to make on that or insights that you can share with us, but we also held our strategic planning session yesterday here at City Hall, and budget workshop lasted from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I think it was very productive. And I want to thank the city for hosting us here, and I would like to thank Colin Guerra for all the technical support that we received. There's a lot of setup that goes into those events. And to Anne Franklin, who was very helpful for me submitting my slides to you for the first time. I want to thank her for her patience, and to Tracy Waldron for all the financial information and assistance that she provides to the EDC every month for our board meetings. And then she was very helpful for me in putting together this report and some of the numbers that I presented to you. I appreciate very much being in your community, and I would like to tell you that there are, coming soon, you will find Old Navy and Planet Fitness, and those can be found at Burleson Crossing and in the old Bells building. And that's it for me, unless you have questions for me. I do want to thank everyone very much I feel very blessed to be here. Thank you.
We appreciate you being on the team. Council, any questions for Ms. Young? All right. Thank you. Good job. All right. Moving on to our community assets. Our first one presenting tonight will receive a quarterly report from the Lost Pines Arts Center.
Good evening, everyone. Let's see. Here we go. So we had a very busy last quarter, again, which is always great. Our members show, the one we have now is running till the end of August, and it'll start up again in September. So that's the artwork throughout the whole building. It's there every day of the year. We've also added more wall space in the building. So we moved one of our big movable walls out to the middle part of our big hallway. So that gives us another space to do exhibits. We had our bird show there first. And then recently we hosted Lee Jameson, and he came and did an art talk for the Bastrop County Historical Society quarterly meeting. Lee has done several exhibits at the museum, and so he was able to come and put on and do a full show on those new walls, so we're real excited to have that addition. Moving on to glass blowing, which is always growing. We have more and more professionals renting space from us from all over around the whole region. We also are doing demonstrations and classes. The blow your own glass, excuse me, sessions are back. So, and Art After Dark is continuing. That's our first Saturday event. And as you can see, the numbers grow every month. And so we're very excited about that. People are coming back out for the artwork, the conversations, and just the live music too is a big draw we have every month. We are continuing our online shows. We started first during the shutdown as out of necessity. They've been so popular, we keep doing them and selling artwork through them as well. A lot of interest in those. So our latest one is Rooted, that you can see that on our Facebook page, our website, and our YouTube channel. Excuse my allergies, not doing well. Then we have the Artist Resilience series that we do in our monthly newsletter. So far, it's been stories from our members about artists who have navigated through the pandemic and how they've stayed motivated and helping other artists. As we hopefully emerge out of the pandemic, we'll shift gears a little bit and move toward other stories people want to share with us from artists and local businesses, anything like that. Our classes, we just had several workshops recently that almost sold out. So we're happy people are ready for classes again. So we'll continue those. And then we did Mayfest on May 8th. We had nearly 400 people that came out that day. It was a very successful day. The vendors were very successful. We see more and more the trend over the past few years has been to buy more handmade and art pieces, and so that makes our vendors very successful. We also had artists doing demonstrations at their booths. That was very popular. We had bird talks, we call them. They're master naturalists and people who know about birds who came and gave talks, and that went over very well too. So we'll do that next May as well. And then we were thrilled to be part of Summer in the City. We had a great turnout. As you can see, people taking part, adults and kids. And one of our board members, Louise Plasick, put all that together for us and braved the heat all day and brought these projects to life. We had a woven colors mural, strips of fabric, and then the bird wings as well. So we'll continue adding to those and put them around town if we can, and certainly at the Art Center. And then we have our stats that continue to grow each quarter. So, and upcoming, we have our mini immersion sessions that we just did in July. Full art immersion will be set for next year, more of a condensed conference. Then we're preparing our online shows already happened. We discussed Lee Jameson, and then we're just gonna keep going. We're gonna do a fall festival as well. So, and that is all I have. Are there any questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yeah, I was just curious how the Art Institute being there, has that increased your traffic flow somewhat?
It has. It really has. We're getting our own visitors who just come to see the Art Center, and then lots and lots of kids and parents who come and see the facility as well. So it's been really a great partnership between us.
I know your number stopped at June, and then so you probably won't recognize that until the
July
next numbers, but it looks like everything's increasing. So
Oh,
it's
it
good
is.
that you've got that built-in audience now.
We do, yeah. We're thankful.
Good
All
job.
right,
Thank you. All right, council, we're moving on to item 9E, receive quarterly report from the Bastrop Opera House. I'm wanting to sing the song for Oompa.
Oh, thanks. Now you got it in my head again. I've listened to it all day. Good evening. The Bastrop Opera House has been very busy, as usual, over the last quarter. Some of the things that we've been up to, we started off this last quarter with our hit show, Hello My Baby, which had 9 sold-out performances. Some of you might have heard about the night the lights went out, and it did, but as they say in showbiz, the show must go on. You can see a couple of pictures here of our actors actually performing by flashlight. And you can, if you look at this wide picture there, you can see 2 of our tech guys that came down and held up some very powerful flashlights. And while I was a nervous wreck, our audience loved every minute of it. Let's see. We also had our 25th annual TNT Youth Conference. It was between June 10th and 14th. We had 250 participants. Now that was about half of what we normally have involved in pre-COVID But it was still wonderful to see these kiddos get together. Some of it took place, well, most of it took place over at the PAC Center, while some of it actually we had to kind of spread out around to be able to have the workshops. You can see, in fact, some of those kiddos up there at the top are some of our own kids getting awards. We walked away with quite a few. You can see them doing workshops, and then that's our kids there on the bottom. They're performing Treasure Island. Willy Wonka is what we are right in the middle of, and we have, this is a 2-week summer musical camp. We have 45 kids enrolled this time, which is more than what we've ever had, and they range from 8 to 17. And it is an amazing program, and these kids, some of them just live for this all summer, and so it's really a great thing. We're there with these kiddos from 9 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they will do 3 performances on the 6th, 7th, and 8th. And tickets are already starting to sell quickly, so I would strongly suggest you to come and see what these kids are doing and get your tickets very soon. Some of the ways that we market for our shows, we market very specific to each performance that we have coming out, and we market heavily with social media. That would be Facebook and Instagram, and we also do our newsletters and e-blast. And when somebody goes to purchase a ticket, before they can check out, they have to state where they heard about us. And so if you've bought tickets before, you know that. And there's a little drop-down box, and it has everything from newspaper to social media to Visit Bastrop to word of mouth, and they have to check where they've heard about us. And so I found this pretty interesting. I ran these numbers. So from November 2020 through June 2021, the tickets sold were 2,651. That is down due to COVID, but it is starting to go up. I found it very interesting that word of mouth was at the top this time, 1,353 tickets, while our own marketing was 1,001 tickets. It's usually just the opposite. Our marketing is at the top and word of mouth is second. So I found it interesting how that had switched this time, which I think means that people are just talking about us more, and the word is really getting out there about us. Our new season opens October 1st. We will have 9 season productions and 2 special events and 5 Academy productions. I didn't list our new season here because we are having a season reveal party on August 14th, and we're really excited about that. That's going to be a lot of fun, and we will officially announce what our season is at that time. The hot funds for the 2021-2022 season that we have put in to formally request will be used in promoting the art of theater and encouraging the attendance of events for out-of-town visitors, and this is what we've always done. They'll be spent on production expenses, promoting and marketing, production equipment, and Performing Arts Academy. Over 60% of our ticket sales are from outside of Bastrop County, and if you've ever been to one of our performances, you see we always ask. In fact, we had somebody our last performance of Shakespeare who was from out of the country. One of our, I'm not kidding, one of our performers' bosses who lives in Switzerland had flown in and landed at the airport at 6 o'clock and drove straight to the Opera House. Yes. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. As of July 1st, we are open at 100% capacity, so we have put all of our seats out, so we are selling more tickets. Not every seat at this point, but it's very full. We are getting a new website that we hope goes live this week, and we will have links to area hotels as well as to Visit Bastrop. And so that when folks come on to our website, they can also see places they could stay when they want to come visit. Bastrop Opera House will, of course, continue to work with the other assets. I'm very excited to be able to work with Nicole now. and the community-owned projects that are intended to promote tourism. Oops, that's it. Any questions?
Great job. I'm looking forward to the reveal party.
Yes.
It's going to be exciting.
Thank you.
All right. Council, any questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Holcomb. Great job. All right. We are moving on to item 9F, receive quarterly report from Bastrop Museum and Visitor Center. Welcome.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Nicole de Guzman. I am the brand new executive director at the Museum and Visitor Center. I have been in this position for 26 days. So I heard that you're all very kind, and I'm counting on that this evening.
That means there'll only be 52 questions, so just keep
Okay.
going. You're going to be good.
52, I can
It's going to
handle
be
that.
fine.
So we're here tonight to thank you for your support, both past and present. What you do for us here at the Museum and the Visitor Center really makes an impact on what we do. So one of the activities that we participated in was May 7th through 8th, Bird Lover Weekend, where we participated in the outrageous bird hat show and contest. And if any of you saw Carrie Fossler's hat, you know that we didn't stand a chance. But we participated nonetheless. It was a lot of fun. We had the Higgs family come in and introduce their children to the grandfather, Alfred Kloss, on our World War II tribute wall. So that was something that they could share with their family. The first Friday's event, we had the Bubble Lady. That's what she likes to be called. And then we are also a stop for a girls' trip weekend. On May 22nd, we did walking tours despite the weather. So we had local historian Ken Kesslis lead Linda Matthews and Bruce Lohman in a walking tour of downtown. And then we also had some newlyweds, Michaela and Brendan Pete. They came into the museum. They thought this was a great place. We have a Lee Jameson painting entitled Mass Wedding. So they came in and took their picture in front of the Mass Wedding painting, which they were aware of. They were just getting married at Ascension Church. And then the bride saw the bear and said, I had to have a picture with the bear. I don't think there was any story there, but she was very excited about it. So our numbers for Q3 were steady. They're the highest that we've had all year. And we're looking to finish strong for the rest of the year. So of the 2,526 visitors, 436 of them stayed in hotels. Visitors came from all over, to include 38 states and 9 countries. So volunteers cover our lunch periods. They serve as docents. And so the volunteer value in the visitor center was $276 this last quarter. And these volunteers come from the community, so they're very important to us. Moving on to the museum highlights. We have rotating special exhibits, and this year we're covering the local churches. So right now, Q3, we had Mount Rose Baptist Church, and we partnered with the library, and we had a display about mobile homes in the library. We had our third quarter meeting, and it was attended by 53 people. Diane Mills was the speaker, and she spoke about Mount Rose Baptist Church. And then in Q3, our research library, we had 26 researchers. And then we did 3 uniquely Bastrop webinars. And I can attest to those webinars. Before I came to Bastrop, I watched them diligently. So I think that they were very well produced, and Ken Kesslis really knows Bastrop. He knows the county, he knows his history. It was something that I found entertaining as a West Texan at the time. And then we also did 5 downtown walking tours. Community volunteers contributed $4,600 in savings to the museum, and they do volunteer activities for the museum, such as transcribing journals, scanning photographs, or inventorying artifacts. So we're looking forward to continued partnerships with the community assets that I've grown to become accustomed to, and I'm learning everybody's names so far and assets that I can work with. I had the pleasure to work with the Lost Pines Art Center the other night for our quarterly meeting, and I want to thank Chloe for all of the very hard work that she put into that meeting for us. And I thank you for your continued support, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Great job. Councilmember Rogers?
I would just like to commend you for having the graphs through the showing the visitors and what you did last year. That information means a lot, so I can kind of see the growth. So I appreciate you putting those in there.
I love graphs, so
There you go.
wait
Keep
for
them
more.
going. Okay.
And thank you for the webinars. That was, for me, it was real interesting to have Ken speaking and telling the history of Bastrop, because there's a lot of things that he talked about that I had no idea happened here. So thanks for doing that. That was really informative.
Thank you.
And I was glad to see the old Mount Rose Baptist Church, because it was there where 71 is now, when MLK used to be Marion Street, and it went all the way through without Highway 71 right there. But that's where Mount Rose Church was original from.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. All right, council, we have already taken care of citizen comments. You guys have been so patient. Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We've already taken care of citizen comments. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. Council, does anybody want anything pulled from the consent agenda? Madam Secretary, if you'll please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 11A, consider action to approve City Council minutes from the July 12th, 2021 Council and Bastrop Economic Development Corporation joint meeting and July 3rd, 2021 regular meeting. Item 11B, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2021-10 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the budget for the fiscal year 2021 in accordance with existing statutory requirements, appropriating the various amounts herein as attached in Exhibit A, repealing all prior ordinances and actions in conflict herewith, and establishing an effective date. Item 11C, consider action to approve resolution number R-2021-72 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, designating the Bastrop County tax assessor to calculate and certify the truth in taxation tax rates. This concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Do you have a motion?
I'd like to move approval of the consent agenda.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Jackson.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Crouch. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. We're moving on to item 12A, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2021-11 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending Chapter 9 Personnel, Article 9.01, Section 9.01.001 of the Bastrop Code of Ordinances relating to the adoption of the employee handbook, making comprehensive revisions to that handbook, repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions, including a severability clause, and establishing an effective date. Proper notice and meeting. Ms. Cantrell is here. Council, we asked that the motion had it not on the consent agenda in case anybody had any further questions. Ms. Cantrell, is there anything you want to add for us this evening?
No, ma'am. I'll just answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I have no questions after my eyes were bleeding from that document. It was very well done. Thank you.
Is that a motion, Councilmember Rogers?
Sure.
I have a motion from
to approve it.
Councilmember Rogers.
Second.
A second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Crouch?
No.
Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Council, we're on our last page, item 12B at the top of the page. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2021-71 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving a lease and maintenance program between the City of Bastrop and Enterprise FM Trust, Enterprise Fleet Management Incorporated, enabling the City of Bastrop Police Department to lease all the department's fleet vehicles, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Is it Ms. Waldron or is it Chief? All right.
Vicki wants to be trained on how to do a resolution, so here we go.
All right.
I don't have a PowerPoint. We had a very intense PowerPoint at our last meeting, and so really what we're bringing forward is a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute all of the agreements, and we attached all the agreements to the agenda packet. So if you have any questions for us, there was one question about mileage at the last meeting. We did confirm there is no mileage limitations on the lease, so we did get that question answered for you.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
I think it's a great program. I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll. Great job, Chief. Great job.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Seriously, I think the reason that went through for the audience, if they weren't here at the last council meeting, Chief Stefanik did an outstanding job of justifying the recommendation and going through all of the details. And that's the only reason that this is happening quickly. All right, council, we're on our last item. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2021-70 of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending City Council rules of procedures, establishing a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Council, you'll know by the cover that this is something that we approved the first time after a long time of having not gone over them in October of 2017. We've made it a point of doing it annually. We try to do it in the July-August timeframe. We've spent some time making sure that the procedures reflect how we actually run our meetings. I know that the city attorney and his office, along with the city secretary, really went through this thoroughly, and I want to extend my thanks that in the packet, it was so clear what had changed and why it had changed. And I truly appreciate the cleanup. I would ask Ms. Franklin or Mr. Borquez if there's anything that you would like to add to what you've presented to council. Council, any questions?
No, I would just like to remind everyone that this document is not only for the council. We expect our boards and commissions to go by this same procedure. Whether it's an open meetings, they have to follow these same procedures no matter what board and commission they are with the city.
Excellent
and
point.
allergies are really bad today.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Rogers. And Council, I would bring to your attention that the actual title of the document is Rules of Procedures for City Council and Boards and Commissions. And we did that intentionally as a council, and that's one of the ways that we provide consistency and transparency to our citizens so they know that when they can see a packet and how to find things, and it brings order, and I think it has really helped our communications throughout the community. So again, thank you to both the city attorney and the city secretary. Anybody want to make a motion?
To approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers.
Sorry.
Do you want to?
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilmember Jackson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
I would like to make one
Councilmember
more
Rogers.
comment on that last item. I also think that having the rules for our boards helps the citizens when they know they're going to sign up to be on one of our boards, that there's going to be some rules that they understand. So I really appreciate us doing that.
Thank you. And I know that that's part of what we'll cover when we do our boards and commission orientation. It's not only ethics, but it's responsibility. So, All right, Councilmember Peterson, we're on item 13.
Yes, ma'am. Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn from Councilmember
Second.
Peterson.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Rogers. It is 8:51, and we are adjourned. Everyone have a safe evening, and take care of your allergies.